Welcome. I love it. We've got a nice lineup of people joining today. So thanks everybody for making the time for this first meetup. And it says webinar series. It's not a webinar series. It's a meetup. We're basically building on a AgTech meetup that they did many years ago, it feels like, before COVID, in Yakima, where I think it was the third Thursday of each month, they would bring together a Yakima AgTech group together in person. And so we're expanding that and going virtual, and off we go. So I'm Steve Mantle. I'm with Innovate Ag, if we don't know each other. Today, this is going to be pretty darned informal. We basically have a handful of different panelists. One is myself, Scott Waller. Scott, are you in the house yet? There we go. I see his thumbnail on here somewhere. Where's the Brady Bunch? Scott Waller. Okay, Scott's in here somewhere. We'll introduce him more officially here in a minute. We have Andrew Nelson, who I think I saw join as well. Substituting in for Todd Brandenburg is Fred Faithmeyer with Pocket INET. We have one more screen, don't we, Ian? Yep, Greg Kettner is joining us just to add a little dose of humor halfway through and lighten things up, because us techies, we can get a little too serious if we're not careful, as we're starting to talk heavy stuff. And then John Morris. John, are you in the house? Yep, there's John. John Morris with Ballast Networks. So
yep, glad to be here.
Glad you're here. So let's the way we figured we would do this today. So this is an experiment, right? So but the thinking agenda wise is we do a little poll, which I'll kick off here and hopefully do it right. And then before we realized that there were going to be 30 some odd attendees and maybe 40, we don't have time to do intros. So basically, as we get into more of the discussion piece, which will be the second part, that's where when you want to interject, just a one-liner who you are and what you want to add to the discussion, and so that'll be fun. It's great to have a number of different perspectives from folks from WSU, from UW, from T-Mobile, I think Washington Technology Industry Association, looks like Teals is here, 5G Open Innovation Lab. We should, knock on wood, actually have a grower or two in here somewhere.
Well, I'm here, Steve.
Thank you, Andrew. Good. See?
Aren't I the token grower? Even though I'm not a token.
There better be more than one grower here.
Wait a second, I'm growing some weeds in my backyard. Does that matter? Not weed, but weeds.
Kurt's growing weed.
It is legal, isn't it?
So that's where we'll be having the meetup
We're in
next month.
Washington.
See, we can all add humor in there.
I think we've got a couple of folks from Microsoft in here. There we go. Scott's in here from Thingy. So I'm going to kick off a poll. And again, knock on wood, I do this right. Launch polling. And the question is really, which tech holds the most promise for ag? So poll is open. We'll share the results here in real time. Are you seeing that to vote on? Good. All right. Yep. Scott voted on Laura already. Nice work, Scott. I don't think it's letting me vote, but my vote's for SneakerNet. No, I'm kidding. We got Bluetooth LE in there in the mix, little Wi-Fi 6.
X.25 over barbed wire. That's what we're calling it.
Whoa, there you go. Yeah, I actually thought about putting token ring in here.
Did you forget Doggy Coin? I don't see Doggy Coin on the list.
Doggy? I don't know what Doggy Coin is. Do tell.
Oh, cryptocurrency. Come on, man.
Oh, there you we go. Riley's shaking it up. Good call. Good call. Yeah, we could do a crypto one on this because I am way behind the times on crypto. I'm gonna get schooled by you sometime, Riley, offline. All right, good. So it looks like the winner is last call for votes. 23 of 28. Come on, 82% of you have voted. Who's the 5 laggards? I wish we could call you out. Who's shy? All right, 25. We're up to 89%. 26 of 28. 20. All right, boom. All right, we're more or less there. I'm going to close polling. And so the final numbers were, share results. There we go. Can you see that now? Laura made it 9 votes, 33%, and then looks like Elon Musk should be happy. So satellite up next.
Boom.
Actually, we did satellite and Starlink, so there you go, 13, and you only got 1 vote, I think.
You
right?
didn't do Laura to satellite though.
We didn't do Laura to satellite. That was a miss.
We'll just bucket those 2 together though.
Right. All right, and SneakerNet didn't even get 1 vote. Guys, what's wrong here? Cool stuff. All right, so with that note, I think we're just going to jump on in. And so the thinking on this approach, again, open to feedback as we get toward the end as to how we vary this up for next go round. The intent is to do this once a month or so. And while we're doing connectivity this time, intent is, and we'll have votes at the end, as to kind of what things you'd like to see in the next. One might be around data, ag data, around imaging, I think could be another area. AI, I mean, the list just kind of goes on and on, but really kind of go through themes and bring in different experts on who you guys think should be great. And I think we can have fun with it. So with that, I want to queue up, I think we've got a slide that shows Andrew Nelson. So Andrew, we asked to speak for 2 or 3 minutes and just share kind of what he's doing out. So he's the token grower. Do we have any other growers in the house? There's got to be somebody. Come on.
It's okay. You can
unmute Kurt Steck growing weed in his backyard.
I grow food.
Did I hear somebody? Was that Mark?
I grow food.
Jeff grows food. You do corn, Jeff?
Lemons and blueberries.
And lemons and blueberries. That's good.
I do apples.
Nice.
Steve.
Oh, Mario, welcome. Apples. Good. Excellent.
Nice,
There we
great.
go.
I
Right?
do heavy apple.
I love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, why don't you talk for a couple minutes of kind of who you are, what you're doing, where you've been tinkering in with connectivity, and that'll be a good tee up for the conversation. Then we'll switch gears up to, who do we have up next behind him, Ian? Fred Facemeyer with Pocket INET. There you go. All right, Andrew, floor is yours.
All right. So since this is informal, I prepared very little.
It's good.
So, you know, I'm Andrew Nelson. I farm in Eastern Washington. I'm a dryland farmer, so that makes things easier and harder at the same point. I don't have to worry about irrigation, but I don't get any benefits from irrigation. I farm with my father, Bruce Nelson. I keep asking Steve to update the slide, but apparently my dad either got a lot younger or I got a lot older, or this is just one weird family. But I do live on the farm with my wife and 2 sons. We have a lot of different initiatives going on here this year, and I'm excited about a lot of different things across them. So, you know, I'm trying to get better connectivity across my farm for sensors, but also for simple things like, you know, my 2-way radios and getting my getting data from my grain storage spread out across my farm quickly and easily. So I'm doing a couple different things. We're rolling out with Microsoft the TV Whitespace IoT across my farm. So I'll have at least 24 devices connected across a radius of about 10 miles. And that's just from one point. And then I'm working with somebody else on doing a private LTE with Ukama, and he's pretty excited. We'll see if we get it done this year, but we should have a few of those up, so I can test that out for speed. And then, the last thing that I'm doing is just plain old Wi-Fi at some of these spots to be able to connect up existing like Raspberry Pi field cams and stuff like that. We're trying to get them onto the TV white space, but they need a little bit more data to send up. But what we're doing with that is my hope is every day I'll be able to, get my day started in my office and be able to see a picture of every single one of my fields and see, any stripe rust warning indicators, any disease indicators, any pest indicators, and have it similar to me driving around all of my fields. So I think that would be one of the really big things on our farm this year. We're also doing some carbon work, and next week my new drone gets here, so I'll have the 42 megapixel sensor on that one to image our field. So that'll be pretty exciting, and also hammer my bandwidth to the most degree possible.
So Andrew, I can't help myself just by asking, like, how are you going to recharge that drone as you're out in your acreage?
Yeah, so I gave Steve this idea. I did get one of those new F-150s with the generator in there, and I have a spray drone as well, which uses even more power to charge. So while I'm in the field, I'll be using that onboard generator to charge up my drone batteries and keep the spray drone in the air. I have enough batteries where I can rotate through them, and one will always be charged. And the same with the new Matrice I'm getting, M300. And yesterday I actually talked with Wybotic about some of their wireless charging stuff, and that'll be pretty interesting going forward as we have more robots on the farm. Kind of like how your Roomba docks and charges. The other robots can kind of come to a place and wirelessly charge and then continue on what they were doing.
Super cool. Love it. And then what was your vote out of the different options, not to flush you out, Andrew, in terms of kind of what connectivity technology has the most promise?
I'm a pragmatic person. So for me, it was trying to fix my operation issue that I keep having trouble with. So that was private LTE. If the price point can get low enough, and I can start putting those out there myself, then I will, because, I talk till my face is blue with, all of our, cell providers in the area, and no one wants to put up towers for me. So I guess I'll have to do it myself.
Yeah, I mean, what percentage of your acreage would you say has zero cell coverage?
At least 50%.
Wow.
And that's zero cell coverage from anybody. I run dual SIMs on my phone. No one has more than 40% coverage on my farm. So, we're hilly. So every time you go down a hill, it goes away.
Wow.
Gotta love the Palouse.
Gotta love the Palouse. It's a beautiful.
Hey Andrew, this is Kurt. Quick question for you. So even when you're getting lack of coverage, what kind of uploads and download speeds are you getting from that where you even do get coverage?
It depends. And especially COVID made it much worse. So before COVID with Verizon, I used to get, pretty good, 15 to 20 down, and like 5 or 10 up with Verizon. Once COVID hit, I could barely load a weather app. So, and that happened, it depends on what towers I'm going against, but that's about half of the Verizon coverage for me is like that. Once I get close to Pullman, it gets better. And once I go further north, it gets better. I don't know. We just have a congested tower or something. And then with T-Mobile, when I hit the tops of the hills, I'm still getting that similar about 20 down and 5 up, but that's when I'm on the tippy top of a hill, you know, and so I have to stop and wait for it to connect in, and
So
then
lots
if
of
I go over the
variability.
hill, it's all gone.
Real quickly, Andrew, just to follow on Kurt's question, who's your broadband provider for like where you live, you know, on the farm?
So we use a wireless internet service provider. It's
Like
White
HughesNet or
Fiber.
somebody? Okay.
So no, not HughesNet. So he has a tower up on the hill by me, and then it goes to a fiber backhaul in a town 5 miles away. So my delay's quite good usually. It's, you know, sub 20-second or 20 millisecond pings to Seattle easily. But they are getting more funding to get him more bandwidth to give us more speed. But it's just a slow process. You know, you can't install fiber when the grounds are insanely wet or frozen and all that fun stuff.
Is the Ukama private network going to be running off that same tower, or are you doing that out of your like a central place on your property? Like, how are you managing through that?
So we're gonna have that on our own towers. It's a pretty small device, and actually for the start, we're gonna make a semi-movable kind of very low tower, because I'm just gonna put it on the top of a hill. So that's how it'll gain most of its height. It'll only be actually a 10-foot mast, but something that I could easily grab myself and move if needed.
Cool, thanks.
Hey, Kurt, again, this is a non-related question, but I got to ask it. I know it's a small community over there. Do you know the Heinrichs?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So it's I played baseball over at Washington State, and he was a baseball alum there, and so I used to work out on his farm when I was over there playing ball in the late '80s. So,
Okay.
so I just know the family pretty well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Andrew, this is
Go ahead.
Fred Face. I had a question if I could ask. You mentioned T-Mobile. Do you know if you're seeing any of their 600 megahertz band 71 signal over there? Do you know anything about that? That's their 5G, their low, low frequency 5G that they're promising to cover a lot of the U.S. with.
Yeah, I do see some, but we are far enough from the state highway that we don't get much of it. So yeah. 195 runs about 15 miles away from me to the west, and so I just kind of get on the edge of that is, you know, kind of how I get my coverage from it.
Thanks.
Awesome. So let's come back in a discussion. I love actually kind of the free-form Q&A, and any other questions you have for Andrew. Let's switch gears though to Fred. And Fred's with Pocket INET. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Pocket INET and what you guys are doing, and your thoughts perhaps a little around CBRS, Fred?
Sure. Well, I guess first thing, I almost never wear a suit anymore to work. That's a picture that was taken from my previous job. I used to work in Homeland Security for a number of years, and so I had a lot of things there. But yeah, it's impressive that you pulled that off of probably LinkedIn or somewhere. But yeah, so Pocket INET has a market that covers really sort of the Mid-Columbia Basin. And we are active in a lot of different ways of providing internet to business and residential customers. We do a lot of fixed wireless. We've been doing that for about 20 years. And we're operating in lots of different frequency bands. One that we are not in, that I know Andrew mentioned, was TV white space. We're still looking at sort of how that's going to fit with us, but it's something that we know a fair amount about. But we're doing a lot in 5 gigahertz. We've done some things in 2.4 gigahertz and some lower frequencies, and then a lot of higher frequencies where they're licensed or otherwise that in some cases have have an application here out in the rural and farming areas for backhaul and so forth. One of the bands that we have recently got involved in is Cbrs, as Steve had mentioned, and that is the band between 3.55 gigahertz and 3.7 gigahertz. So it's right in the middle of what they would call sort of mid-band spectrum. It's a band that used to have some real restrictions and still has restrictions with some government radar, primarily along the coastal areas with Navy radar and so forth. Some satellite downlinks and some areas related to that are affected. And in fact, there are a couple in the Washington and Oregon area where they have a footprint that we have to somewhat stay away from, at least portions of the frequency where they're operating. But what the government has done, and this is becoming a standard way of approaching things with frequency spectrum, is they want to provide for multiple users to be in there at once. In the past, somebody would get a license for a band and they would just sit on it, and they might or might not use it, but it wasn't available for anybody else to use even if they weren't using it. Well, they decided they couldn't do that anymore because spectrum is so valuable that they wanted to make sure that lots of people could get in and make use of it. So in this CBRS band, they set up a structure where they would have some companies that would provide essentially monitoring to make sure that there weren't conflicts with the radar, the government radar, and the other priority users and others that might want to get on. And so one of the things they did in doing that is they did an auction back last summer where they auctioned off 10 megahertz channels. So they auctioned off some the frequency spectrum, about half of this band, that gave priority to anybody that happened to win the auction. And so they did it on a county by county basis, and Pocket INET was one of the winners in a number of the counties. In pretty much all the counties in our market, we won some there. And there have been other auctions that have happened as well, but CBRS is unique in that it supports things like private LTE that Andrew had mentioned. It supports fixed wireless. A couple of vendors that provide gear for that. It supports other kinds of operations. Mobile carriers are using it. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different things that can be done with that band, particularly because it's not as noisy as the unregulated, 5 gigahertz bands, or certainly 2.4 and so forth. So we are using that band to provide connectivity generally at a higher data rate than we would feel comfortable doing in 5 gigahertz and Wi-Fi bands. But it also provides for the ability to put in an LTE mode, to put large numbers of subscribers on a tower and be able to operate there without interference. And so I think it has a lot of promise, both in terms of connecting the high data rate users that are out there, whether it be your cameras, LiDAR, maybe the other processing areas where you're wanting to be able to pull data together and process that to understand what's going on out on your farms and your orchards and so forth. But it also provides some capability for particularly connecting up some of the little smaller site that you would need to have out there, as Andrew had mentioned, to reach down into some of the areas where you just can't see them from the main towers and so forth.
Right. Awesome. And what counties are you covering then?
Well, so Pocket INET specifically has licenses in Walla Walla, Franklin, Asotin, Benton. Let's see here. Those are the main ones that we're in Washington with licenses, and then we have Umatilla and Union and Morrow in. Just a second here.
Really cool, Fred.
Yeah, so a number of those areas.
That is awesome. That's cool to see how you guys are evolving on that. And I think that the neat thing about Pocket INET is you guys have some substantial fiber assets footprint as well, right, to leverage.
Yeah, and
Uh,
the good thing is that even in areas where we don't have licenses, that band, as well as 5 gigahertz, they're opening up the 6 gigahertz band. They're going to be auctioning off their bands, the band right below CBRS is going up for auction here and is going to be opened up this coming year. So there are a lot of other bands that are opening up, and, you know, we operate pretty much in any band where we can get in and use it to provide high quality service, and there's technology available to us.
Awesome.
So
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Quick question, then I'm gonna move it along.
you know what? Go ahead, move it along. I'll take it
Okay.
offline.
All right, great. So next, Scott, are you? It looks like, yep, we've got some audio.
Yeah,
The thingy guy.
Hey, the LoRaWAN guy.
Fire
Okay,
away.
so can you hear me good? Sorry, I'm on the
Yes.
road.
You're good.
Yeah. So by the way, if I just spent an entire day at a King County Mass vaccination clinic, and so trust me, there's a lot of opportunities for data consolidation, aggregation, optimization. But hats off to the workers down there because they've been working their butts off. But it's amazing how many folks you can get through, and there's a long ways to go. But just a quick plug for the hard workers that are out there,
Awesome.
and lots of opportunity for IoT. Trust me. So just a quick intro on me. I run a company called Thingy IoT. We've been building sensors ourselves, primarily some air quality stuff, environmental monitoring, weather stations, et cetera, and really got involved when I was at Cisco several years ago around the LoRaWAN space. We were working closely with Amazon and others and what they were using it for industrial and manufacturing. But then obviously the last couple of years I've been spending some time with some friends in vineyards and some unique projects between UW and WSU on air quality monitoring, specifically some research in industrial and farm worker exposure to smoke. And sure enough, last year when the smoke happened and we had our wildfire sensor out, connected via LoRaWAN networks, who knew that smoke taint is a problem? But there's been a lot of research. We're doing that. And the focus we've been working on is really how do we embrace the ecosystem that's evolved over the last couple of years in LoRaWAN? How do we figure out the right sensors to work in the right use cases? Knowing that there's limitations. You're not going to be running a lot of data streaming, telemetry, video, audio of those types that require low latency, large bandwidth connections. And so LoRaWAN being a very long range, low power, low cost solution for those places where you might need to have, let's say, water or soil monitoring, or some air quality, or some microclimate weather analysis for low-cost sensors that are going to run on a battery in a field for 5 to 10 years. It's a really optimal solution. The challenge we have in the U.S. and what we're trying to solve is either, is it going to be very large carriers that are going to deploy LoRaWAN like they do in Europe, where you have KPN and Orange and Swisscom all providing public access via LoRaWAN, or what we're starting to see is, every farm might have a gateway, or every region might have a gateway, or maybe we work with someone like Pocket iNet or another carrier in an area. But we're actively building in the Yakima and Walla Walla regions, primarily the wine growing territories, to support whether it's research, water monitoring, as in, how much water utilization is being used, the economics of water. Am I using the well versus should I use my water rights and above ground supplies? And really doing that in a highly distributed way. So instead of putting 2 or 3 weather stations, we might put 50 weather stations to really look at microclimate in, whatever crops we're working on, whether it be apples or primarily wine grapes lately. And then we're working on some micro irrigation work, but primarily it's the solving the use case is LoRaWAN, the right connectivity solution for really low cost, low power, low frequency sensors. And can we provide the connectivity at a low cost? Some of the challenges obviously have been around, some of the products in the market take a little bit of massaging. I think the way I looked at it is a lot of these products come from Europe and they just expect that LoRaWAN's everywhere. But it doesn't work necessarily with every network provider, and so we've spent a lot of time working on packet decodes and data normalization and support across different LoRaWAN network server backends. So we're just trying to figure out where the right mix is, and obviously there's a high interest in LoRaWAN, obviously by Steve's survey. So we're here to help and support folks in their connectivity journey, specifically if you're thinking in bits, not necessarily bytes. And low cost, highly distributed sensors over very long ranges. That's what our focus has been. So we're excited about ag and working with you guys out there. And then I think the last part is, obviously the LoRaWAN gateways need backhaul to connect to the network servers and to get the data into the cloud where it's useful for applications. So we're constantly looking at the gateways and working with the manufacturers that can they support connecting to Cbrs band 48, for example, or reliable LTE connectivity, knowing that a LoRaWAN gateway on average is only using a couple hundred megabytes total a month. So bandwidth utilization overall is pretty small. So we don't need fiber connectivity, but looking to partner with all you guys here as well. That's my 2 minutes.
Good summary on the bits not bytes on LoRa being appropriate for, and I just continue to be wowed at how many years you can get out of a battery on something that's tied to LoRa. Pretty bloody cool. All right, so let's thanks Scott. Let's switch up to who we got next. John Morris, Ballast. John, tell us a little bit about yourself, briefly about the 5G test bed that's going on out in Snohomish County that you've done a lot of work with, and we've got a couple of other folks from Kurt Steck here from the 5G Open Innovation Lab as well, and then we can have more discussion about that later on as well. John, fire away.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me. I did want to make one quick comment with respect to LoRa and your survey, which I think is really interesting as you're talking through this with everybody, which is that I don't think that there is one connectivity solution really for any of this stuff. I mean, I think you really want to, design your system based on use cases. And I think that's, I think a lot of what, the 5G Open Innovation Lab, what a lot of people are working on is how do we get the right solutions at the right price point that create the right kind of benefit for, everybody that's involved. When you set up the field labs for, whether it's the Open Innovation Labs or for some of the universities that are maybe on the call and so on, one of the challenges is how do you go about setting up these labs in a way that you can have this this playground that creates a lot of value for the participants in that playground. I do have, a few slides, but we had Kurt and Jim from 5G Open Innovation Lab were kind enough to involve my company, Ballast, and we're focused on private networks, building and managing private networks, in helping build out 2 farms and a mobile center to allow for connectivity and mobile edge compute for the lab. And that was done in about 44 days, so a very quick time frame over the holidays using CARES Act money that was funneled through Snohomish County. We accomplished a lot. We stood up 2 full networks, and Expedo, who's also on the call, I think Jim Joseph's on the call as well. There's a lot of different people that were involved in this project. And I don't think you can get something like this done as quickly as it was done without a lot of support from a whole lot of people. I do have a couple of pictures, but it might not be great to show them given everything that's going on right now. But I'm happy to share them if it's.
Yeah, you've got presentation rights. Share us a couple slides, a couple pages, and that'd be great.
So hopefully everybody can see my screen here. Yeah. This is the Swans Trail. And if you, let's see, sorry. And what you see here is the antenna, and this right below the antenna is CPE from T-Mobile that provided the backhaul for the network. You can't quite see the GPS unit below the antenna, but there's also This angle doesn't quite allow for it, but there's also a GPS unit. And if you look to the left there, within the barn, the bottom left corner, you see an MBO from Nokia. That was the RAN source that powered the network. And to just the right of that, you see a cabinet, and that cabinet allows for all the equipment that was associated with this particular installation at Swans Trail. That includes all of the, both the switch, but also the core and other equipment that's required to support this network. And from a sort of like, just to kind of give you a sense for the coverage, this is a coverage map kind of showing, if you look, it's a 2-sector system. If you look to the left there, you can actually see the propagation. Swans Trail is about a 200-acre farm, so it's not quite as big as what Nelson has there, but you get a sense for what kind of coverage we got from this barn here. And so for each one of these, for each one of these projects, these 2 projects, we were able to kind of build this out. And it was a pretty awesome opportunity to work with the farmers there. We got a lot of good feedback around connectivity. And like I said, we're very proud to be part of that. Kurt, you want to say anything further around that?
Yeah, just real briefly, the only thing I'd add to it is, guys, these are test labs, right? One of the things that's ultimately going to drive this business forward is, and understanding is the business and economics of this thing, right? At the end of the day, if the applications that are built aren't driving value for growers are going to have no interest. And if the growers have no interest, then the telco companies are going to have no interest, because that's going to mean no data is going to cross their networks, right? And so we have a bit of the chicken and the egg, a cart and a horse type of thing. And part of what we're doing is trying to set these labs up so that we can get people out there building applications, experimenting with different types of technologies, to ultimately, with the long story here, is to go build out an infrastructure that's going to support, I'll say, a digital transformation in the industry. And I don't think there's going to be any particular one technology that wins out. I think it's going to be multitudes of technology that end up providing coverage, but a lot of this is tied to the economics behind the business model and not just the technology. And I think that's one of the things that we're really trying to understand is ultimately what's going to drive the economics that are going to prove this cases out and drive the kind of coverage out that I think really will drive transformation in the industry.
Yeah, no, great call out, and that's why we're really excited about it. So Ian, why don't you just share back out? I'm going to do a quick summary on Smart Orchard and kind of evolution. Then we'll key off to Greg Kettner from Work Happy, just to kind of lighten things up for us a little bit, and then we'll just do more free-form discussion where I've got a handful of just questions that we can all discuss openly. So Innovate Ag, AgTech startup out of Walla Walla, and shout out to Riley, the other Walla Walla AgTech startup based on here, which also recently won the American Farm Bureau Entrepreneur of the Year. Hats off, Riley, with Harvest, really cool stuff. And basically on so Innovate Ag from we started basically by leaning in on pulling data in from many different sources for growers, and with the intent to show different visualizations of that and enable growers to make take more actionable decisions based on not having to look at a ton of data silos. And actually, Dave Brown, it's all kind of started back with, it's all Dave's fault. And I sat at a focus group a couple of years ago with growers, and they said, look, it's great that Microsoft and other startups can do AI and blockchain, all this type of thing, but we want to understand the bloody weather, what it is on our just different parts of the land. And Dave was there, that focus group as well, from AgWeatherNet. So feel free to Q&A him as we switch gears on that. So we're rolling out this next year a second Smart Orchard project, which really brings together a combination of sensors, labor data, chemical data, imagery, and critically, what we're being more purposeful around this year is connectivity. And at some point, we hope that there will be an intersect in with the 5G Open Innovation Lab as well. In the meantime, we're working in parallel, and we are working with Thingy to bring in LoRa as a gateway for coverage for some of the sensors. We'll tie into whatever mobile networks we can tie into there as well. But that particular site that we haven't announced yet that will turn on, most likely there will be robotics and automation starting to flow in there as well, where the connectivity is just all the more critical. So looking forward to that. So Greg Kettner, good friend of mine for all too many years. Who's counting? Why don't you kind of mix things up a little bit for us and share a little bit about what you guys are doing from Work Happy, and off you go. Welcome.
Sounds great. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me. Thank you, everybody. Everyone else has been talking about bands, and nobody yet has mentioned Bon Jovi. So I want to give a shout out to Bon Jovi.
Living on a prayer?
Sorry, I'm a Zeppelin guy.
All right, Zeppelin's fine. I'm in that age bracket. Like Steve said, we've known each other since high school. 27 years of sales experience. Did stand-up comedy for 12. And recently during the pandemic, lost my job due to COVID and pivoted and brought the two together. How do I help people work happy? How do I help people laugh more often? We don't, as it is as adults. Children up to 4 years old laugh up to 300 times per day. And as adults, it's 17. So there's a big disconnect. And the more we laugh, it releases dopamine, cortisone, endorphins, and those are the happy drugs, and they're free, which allows us to be even more productive, less stressed, and better mental health. So I work with business professionals and sales organizations. How do we do that? How do we work happy so that we have more money, more revenue, better mental health for everybody involved, and all the while less stress? And when Steve asked me to come on, I said, absolutely, I would love to talk to you folks just briefly. This is what I do. Steve said 5 minutes, and I'm like, well, it's usually 45, but here we go. Just a quick story, and then I'll finish off with a quick icebreaker that you guys can take for your next meetings that we have, because we're all on Zoom, and as we know, we're on Zoom too long, we get mush in our head. So the first story is about doing your research and being an early adapter, and how I tried to do this. I was selling hockey tickets for the junior hockey team in Seattle Thunderbirds during the .com boom. And I was making a lot of money, a lot of commission on reaching out to the .com companies, selling them group tickets, 200 or 300 tickets at a time, which I got paid my commission. And I sold it as, this is for your either your clients or your employees, come out, have fun, have a great time. And so I was doing really well. And then I heard about this one company, Amazon. And so I thought, well, here's another victim. I'll sell them a whack of tickets, make my commission, and that'll be it. And I tried emailing this guy. I left voicemails, Jeff Bezos or Bezos. So I was frustrated after 2 or 3 months of not getting any return calls. I couldn't get through the gatekeeper to talk to Jeff. I was watching the news one night, and they had done a story on him and Jeff's pizza rule for a meeting. And he said, never have more people than 2 pizzas can take care of at a meeting. So he was trying to say, keep it small, do what you can, but never have a huge meeting. So keep it small with these pizzas. And at that point I had a thought. I said, well, if the guy likes pizza, he won't get back to me on hockey tickets. Maybe I'll show up with a pizza and see what happens. So on the way home one afternoon, I stopped by Pizza Hut, bought a large cheese pizza with pepperoni, because that's my favorite. And I walked into Amazon's headquarters at the time, and I said, hello, my name is Greg Kettner, and I have a delivery for Jeff Bezos. And the receptionist kind of looked at me like weird, like, well, he didn't order pizza today because I do that. I said, I'm not sure what's happening, but I can't go back. I'm going to get fired if I don't deliver this pizza. So she gave me a weird kind of look, and she's like, all right, well, I'll call him. So she called him, and I kind of heard this weird, awkward conversation between her and this Jeff Bezos guy. And she hung up the phone. She's like, well, he's coming down. But now I was in a bind because I had I knew I was lying. Like I didn't think that far ahead. I didn't do my research. All I knew was pizzas, and I got to get a meeting with this guy. So I was standing in the lobby, and the elevator doors opened up, and this guy, short guy, started walking towards me, and he saw the pizza, and I said, "Hey, Jeff, it's Greg with the Seattle Thunderbirds," and he threw his head back and just started laughing. He goes, "Well played," and I go, "What?" And he goes, "I know who you are." And I said, "Well, that's really odd because you haven't returned a phone call or an email." And he said, "That's because I hate hockey, but I love pizza." He grabbed the pizza, turned around and walked away. I'm like, "So no hockey?" He said, "No hockey." And that day I learned a very important lesson. Instead of spending $18 on a large pepperoni pizza, I should have bought stock at $3.12. And if I had, I wouldn't be talking to you guys today. I would be in on my own private island somewhere. So the point to that story is to, be an early adapter. If I would have gone and talked to him, had the information like you guys are doing now, jump on board early, it can grow to big things. So that's my Jeff Bezos story. And I don't know if any of you guys haven't been around for 20 years, but he owns Amazon, or did. Well, his wife owns half now. Or he gave out, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, all right. So I know it's almost the end of the day. We're going to do a quick fun activity. And like I said, take this to your next Zoom meeting or to your team or whoever you do, or even if it's a family call. But today we're going to be artists. So everybody, if you can grab a pad of paper and a pen, and we'll take about 60 seconds to do this. And Steve is going to judge the winner on this, and whoever is the winner is an all expenses paid trip to Italy. So this is very
paying for that? Thank you so much, Greg, for paying for that.
John Morse is paying.
All right, excellent. Thank you, John.
So what we're going to do is we're going to draw.
Yeah, maybe not.
So what we'll do, we'll get our pad of paper and pen. If you have the ability to turn your video on, it helps at the very end of this. Feel free to do that. But we're going to draw a picture of Steve. So we'll, at the count of 3, we'll start, doing whatever. But the one thing is you have to put the pad of paper on top of your head, like this. So everybody, put your pad of paper on top of your head. Grab your Sharpie or a pencil or blood or whatever you want to use. And we're going to draw a picture of Steve Mantle. And then when I count 3, 2, 1, we'll all we'll put our pads down and see who's the winner on this. All right, so are you ready? All right, here we go. So we got Steve. He's got obviously a round head, or at least last time I saw him, he did. So you gotta make sure he's got a head, and then obviously 2 eyes. Oh, where's my pad of paper? There. So 2 eyes, some ears, maybe. I don't know. Do you still have a goatee, Steve?
Yeah.
You have a goatee.
Kurt, you're not writing on your head, are you, Kurt? All right, there you are.
So you're gonna draw a goatee for Steve.
Oh, sure.
And a baseball cap.
Steve, was that a reference to the fact that my head is bald enough that it could be a canvas? Come on now.
Right, on the count of 3, we'll all show our photos here. 1, 2, 3.
There you go.
I think we all got the goatee part.
Wow, you guys are on it. Wow.
The goatee's just not attached to the face.
Wow, I have to. I think Jennifer's got it.
Greg's actually looks like something.
I like Jennifer from Teals is nice.
Yeah. Hey, look at that one. Yes, too is little.
Jeff's done pretty well as well, though, too. I'd say, but Jennifer takes the cake. Well done. Greg Kettner, thank you very much.
Trip to Italy.
Virtual trip to Italy.
Ballast.
Virtual trip to Italy.
So let's cue it up since we're running toward the end. Greg, thank you very much. And if you need to mix it up in your next get together, look up gregkettner.com. All right. So last slide, I think, should have basically open discussion. So queued up, satellite, cellular, LoRa, edge compute use cases. Notice each of these has what are the actual economics for each of these. So, who wants to take a stab on the first question? They just kind of want to throw out there. in the 10 minutes or so that we've got left, kind of tied to one of these, and then
I do have just a couple of comments about specifically, sort of use cases, sort of the intent of what, how the satellites were put up there, and what, with Global Star, it's really focused on voice services. So you don't have the kind of high bandwidth use cases that are real, supportive necessarily of maybe it could probably support LoRa, but it can't support a lot of other kinds of applications like autonomous driving and other things in these kind of terrains. And you look at Starlink, you think in terms more of kind of broadband services in terms of how that's providing connectivity. So you're going to have a much higher bandwidth on the downlink rather than the uplink. So you don't really have a balance of those two. So I think in terms of when you talk about satellite resources for this, I think it's really a spot case in terms of how that actually gets done, at least from my perspective. And I just thought I'd hop in, partly tied to the conversations I've been having that related to what we're working on for your kind of mobile center, so mobile data center.
I can add another kind of a little kind of a tail onto that side, but on the low bandwidth side. So obviously I've been in the LoRaWAN space for a while, but one of the things in the very, very remote, non-high bandwidth, non-voice circuit switch type use cases, Global Star, Starlink, we're starting to see a bunch of interesting little startups come out. There's probably about 6 or 7 different microcube satellites. So we're not talking high bandwidth, we're talking somewhat higher latency type, but really remote. So think of remote weather stations. We got Antarctica. We got to think about, maybe Andrew's farm where he just needs a passive sensor. So direct to satellite from sensors becomes a little more interesting. So you have, like, you get Swarm Space. Swarm Space actually is using LoRa modulation, right? So it's got 200 byte frames with a kilobit per second. We've been toying with that as a backhaul mechanism for like small installations of LoRa sensors in very, very remote areas. But it's interesting when we can't get LoRaWAN or backhaul, we can't get LTE, we can't get something like Starlink because of even the power limitations, that the direct to satellite is going to get really interesting. There's about 6 or 7 different startups. We'll see who actually exists in 2-3 years. There was a lot of promise last year. But the reality is COVID scrapped a ton of launches. And so, yeah, we'll see. Besides that and the junk that's going to be in space, I mean, we're going to have hundreds of small little satellites.
Well, Scott, Scott, I think actually one thing that's really interesting, you made the comment about small startups and that kind of thing. And, one of the things that's interesting to me is tracking, like asset tracking. So, like in Australia, there's these cow tags from Cbrs that are tracking like millions of herds of cattle, on this kind of open grazing land in, Australia. I think there's things like that I think lend themselves to satellite more than other uses, that I think, identifying those use cases, I think is a big deal.
Well, I think it was your comment earlier too, John, around it's not one, and I think we all agree in our last conversation a couple of weeks ago, is it's not one or the other. It's, how many times we've been in the war of LTE and narrowband IoT versus LoRaWAN and Sigfox and all this stuff, or TV white space. In the end, it's the use case. And a lot of it, as we're seeing in ag, is complementary. We got Andrew's use case. He's got everything. So what is the right use case for the right solution for the right use case? And it might be a combination. And the more we come together, I'm as a LoRaWAN provider, I need backhaul connectivity, reliable backhaul. If that's satellite or if that's, ground-based or LTE-based, we all need to work together. Right. In the end, the importance is solving the problem and getting the data that's needed for the right application for the farmers.
I'm excited for same space. I'm excited for satellite, but my one worry is when the first denial of service attack hits satellite, from space, there's going to be nothing that I can do from it down here. Or just, having a big solar flare activity, cuts out my GPS. We haven't had a big one since Starlink has been live. What's that going to do to those communications. Because I mean, there's some days where I can barely get GPS connected on my tractors. It's a pain. I mean, I have to move the steering wheel then when going across the field. It's a very big problem for me. So. That was a little humor for non-farmers out there. Sorry.
I got it.
I would say Iridium satellite has been the most reliable telemetry I've used in any scenario, but it is too expensive. If Iridium satellite was $1.70 instead of $17 a month per weather station, I would probably be using Iridium exclusively.
Well, so to that end, I mean, I know some out there have experimented with Swarm, right? That's kind of along those lines. Any thoughts out there on Swarm?
I could let someone else jump in if they want to, but I've been prototyping and working closely with those. I've got a bunch of stuff out there. I think the challenge I've seen with these startups in that space, that direct to sensor from satellite, in that low bandwidth, higher latency space, has been getting the fleet in the sky. We had promises of everyone having 150 satellites, and so you can have in sun synchronous orbit, you can have a satellite above you or multiples every 5 minutes. The challenge has been getting those up there and operational. So I think it'll be interesting to see at the end of 2021 who actually has that. I like the Swarm promise because of what they're doing and how fast they're getting their fleet up, but that's all it takes is one error, and they could fail like any other startup at this, or lose their funding, or lose their support, or not be able to get experimental licenses from the FCC. I'm working closely with Lacuna Space and direct to satellite in the US, and just trying to get an FCC license for experimental use has been tough. So it'll be interesting. I think there's a lot of promise in that, because at $5 per device, where I'm going to have global connectivity and a satellite above me at least every 5 minutes, I'm going to get close to real time for remote weather stations. But proof is in the pudding at the end of the year when all the fleet's up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one quick comment tied to that, which is in terms of the economics and how all this kind of plays out and the promise. The Qualcomm chipset, the new chipsets that are coming out in the fall, have the new band 53 that's ubiquitous across the US. I do think it would be quite interesting how you can get interoperability between the satellites themselves and terrestrial networks if you were able to do that sort of on a homogeneous network. So I'm just saying it's interesting. I'm not saying how it'll go or not go, but I do think between Starlink, some of the other things that are happening within the satellite space, it's pretty interesting.
Love it. So, man, time management is on my list for next time. I think this has been fun, and I hope you guys found the same. Quick poll results for votes on future AgTech meetups. There's the results right there. Thank you to the 15 or so folks that, it looks like 20 some odd votes that voted. So Manoj, you should feel good in that Manoj is a professor at WSU that focuses heavily on robotics out in orchards and vineyards and so on. So robotics and automation is high up there, data and AI, edge computing, and killer IoT. So we've got a lot to cover over the next few months. And if you have, we'll pick one of these. I think we'll go with the highest. So we'll go with data and AI, and then do robotics and automation up next. If you've got anybody that you would like to suggest come in and as an expert around data and AI in the ag space, send them our way, and we'll bring them in and have them part of the meetup. And again, the intent on this is to be as open as possible. That's what a meetup's supposed to be. Any other suggestions on this would be great. I think we may have a closing slide on just kind of some resources, Ian, just to put there in the backdrop. Some webinars you can check out in some of this space as well, tied into IoT and some imagery. If you want to delve in a little bit more on rural connectivity, we did a webinar with Todd Brandenburg, with Pocket INET, John Morris, and who am I forgetting there for a second? Last couple of weeks, it's available on demand. And Thanks for taking time out of your evening, everybody. We'll leave you to it.
Next time we're gonna do virtual beers.
Thank
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll have the recording of this available on demand as well if anybody wants to go back and watch it. Have a good one, guys.
Cool.
See you.
Thanks for setting it up, Steve.
Bye.
Bye.